this is Warhawk Beyond 2040, and welcome to a very special edition of the Progressive Rock and Metal album review series. And today I'm going to be taking a look at the amazing and impressive catalogue from one of the finest bands to ever come out of Britain. And this band has been a force since bursting onto the prog scene in the mid 1990s, and they are still going very strong to this day as we speak. And I've been a huge fan of this band for a really long time now, and I've had the great pleasure of seeing this incredible band live on three different occasions, and they were absolutely fantastic. Some of the best shows I have ever seen. And this is a band that I've been wanting to talk about on this series for a really long time now. And I am super excited to be discussing this band's incredible catalogue of albums. And this is a band that's, quite frankly, in my opinion, need no introduction whatsoever. I am talking about, of course, the one and only British progressive rock band, Arena. So, Arena was formed in 1995 by keyboardist Clive Nolan from Pendragon and Shadowland and drummer Mick Pointer, formerly of Marillion. So, Clive Nolan and Mick Pointer are the co-founders of Arena, and they have played in every single incarnation and lineup of the band since its inception. And throughout their history, Arena have had two guitarists, four bass players, and five singers. And since 1997, for the last 28 plus years now, the core of the band has been Clive Nolan, Mick Pointer, and John Mitchell. And Arena have had a number of different lineup changes, but the one that is considered by many to be the classic Arena lineup was the one comprised of Clive Nolan, Mick Pointer, John Mitchell, Ian Salmon, and Rob Soden, which lasted for a total of 11 years, from 1998 to 2010. And the current Arena configuration, which has lasted for over 5.5 years so far, is currently comprised of Clive Nolan, Mick Pointer, John Mitchell, Kylan Amos, and Damien Wilson. So when you hear Arena, you know straight away it's them, as they have a very distinct and recognizable sound. And their style of music ranges from progressive rock to symphonic to hard rock to even metal as well. And a lot of Marillion's music is very similar to the Fish era of Marillion. Arena are known for long compositions, incredible musicianship. Their music can be slow or soft, it can be fast and hard hitting. At times, it can be quite atmospheric, it can be quite brooding and quite menacing, and even on occasions, it can lean more towards the horror style of music. But one thing that Arena do as well as any progressive rock band do is they know how to put together a great collection of material, which they have done for 30 years now and still continue to do it very well. And as I said, Arena, aside from their incredible playing, they're known for their quirky harmonies and they're known for tight musicianship and just unbelievable soloing. You name it, Arena do it all and do it as good as anybody in the progressive rock genre. So, for today's special edition, I'm going to be discussing the entire catalogue of Arena, which is a total of 13 albums. So, that's 10 studio albums and 3 EPs. And as always, I'm going to be talking about each album individually, and I'll be choosing which one I think is the best one. Not an easy challenge. I have just finished listening to the entire Arena catalogue, and I can honestly tell you now, there are no bad albums in this catalogue whatsoever. Obviously, there are a few which I consider to be a little bit better than others, but what you will find as we go through each Arena album is they're all well produced. There's some excellent music on all of these albums, and they're all different. And that's what makes Arena's catalogue so great. Is any of these albums could be a number one or an all-time favorite. This is an incredibly strong catalogue. No duff albums whatsoever. So, you can't go wrong with any of these albums. So if someone said to me, which Arena album would you recommend to me? I will turn around and say the entire catalogue. Start with any of them. They're all good and they're so great. That's what I like about Arena. They never short you of great music, and there's a lot to choose from, in my opinion. So we're going to start with the first album, and this one came out in 1985, and this one is called Songs from the Lion's Cage. So this is Arena's first album, and it doesn't feature John Mitchell. It actually features the band's original guitarist, Keith Moore. And in preparation for this special edition, as I mentioned earlier, I decided to listen to the entire catalogue of Arena. And I hadn't really listened to the first album in its entirety. I may have heard a few odd tracks here and there, but I decided to listen to the first album all the way through. And I can honestly tell you now, this album is incredible. It is so good. The material is very strong. A lot of the material featured on here would go on to become classics, as the band still play a lot of material from this album to this day. And when I was listening to this album, I had to pretty much remind myself on certain occasions that John Mitchell doesn't play on this one, because a lot of the guitar playing from Keith Moore would go on to become hallmarks for later albums that featured John Mitchell. Now, Keith Moore and John Mitchell are two very different guitar players, but it is hard to ignore the contributions of Keith Moore, because his guitar playing really helped play an important role in developing the early sound of Arena. But when you listen to the first album, you don't sit there and think, it sounds like a different band. You listen to it, you think, oh, that's Arena, because the guitar playing and the sound overall of Arena hasn't really changed that much. Obviously, you can hear the differences, of course, but how Arena sounded in 1995 for their first album isn't really a lot different to how they sound now. Obviously, there are differences, of course, but it's not that much different. But this album pretty much set the tone for what Arena were going to be about. And I can tell you now, this one definitely doesn't disappoint whatsoever. So let's have a little quick look, shall we? So all compositions are written and composed by Clive Nolan and Mick Pointer. So the lineup that's featured on this album is Clive Nolan on keyboards, Mick Pointer on drums, Cliff Orsey on bass, Keith Moore on guitars, and John Carlson on vocals. And we also have a guest appearance from Steve Rothery from Marillion, who is featured on one track. And wow, incredible music, absolutely incredible. So there is all the lyrics, and there's more lyrics here as well. And we've got more lyrics here, and more lyrics, and got more lyrics here too. And we've got all the production notes and credits as well. But this album, start to finish, incredibly strong. So we got the opener, Out of the Wilderness, which is just absolutely incredible. Then we've got Crying for Help Part 1, which is one of the band's trademark tracks. Then we've got Valley of the Kings, which is incredible. Crying for Help Part 2, which is more or less a continuation of Crying for Help Part 1. Jericho is excellent. Crying for Help Part 3 is brilliant. Midas Vision is great. Crying for Help Part 4 is great. And then we got the 14-minute epic Solomon, which is just an amazing closer. But top to bottom, Songs from the Lion's Cage is fantastic. What an unbelievable debut for Arena. And the cool thing about the band is they were just warming up, but there is some incredible songs. And wow, like I said, what a debut album. So the standouts for me are Out of the Wilderness, Valley of the Kings, Jericho, Midas Vision, and Solomon. But the whole album, top to bottom, is just fantastic. Mick Pointer's drums is all over the music. Clive Nolan's keyboards has a massive presence, and Keith Moore's crunchy guitar playing really helps the music flow and really delivers a hell of a punch. But holy cow, absolutely incredible. And John Carson's vocals is just off the charts. And the interesting thing about the singers of Arena, barring their current one, they all sound very similar. And I don't know if that's just coincidence or not, but a lot of the singers for Arena, barring their current one, all have very similar vocal ranges. And that's not a case of they've done that deliberately, just the Arena sound. That is the Arena's voice. But, you know, when you listen to the first four singers, they don't really sound that much different. But wow, John Carson, what a singer. Doesn't really get talked about that much, but holy cow, he's got some pipes on him. I'm telling you, he's got some great vocals, which kind of reminds me of Marillion's Fish a little bit. You know, his vocal range is very quirky, but boy, great singer, great band, unbelievable playing, tight musicianship from the word go. But damn, this is a monster album. Doesn't get talked about that much, but if you're looking to get into Arena, this is the perfect album to start with. And there's no better place to start than the debut because this is incredible. So there you have it. Songs from the Lion's Cage, Arena's first album, the one that started it all and the one that helped set the tone. Brilliant album and absolutely enjoyed this one so much. What a debut. Love it. So we move on to the next album, and this one came out in 1996, and this one is called Pride. So this is the band's second album and follow-up from Songs from the Lion's Cage. And after listening to this all the way through, it is absolutely amazing. Equally as good as the band's debut. Lots of memorable songs, some that would go on to become mainstays in the band's set list to this day. And there is some incredible music, and I really enjoyed listening to this one a lot. And I would say it's equally as good as the first album. It really is. So let's have a quick look, shall we? So the lineup has changed. So John Carson is gone. So in his place, we've got Paul Wrightson on vocals, and Cliff Orsey has gone, and we've got John Jowett on bass, who would become one of the band's most stable early members. He would be in the band for quite a long time. So we've got Keith Moore on guitars, we've got Clive Nolan on keyboards, and we've got Mick Pointer on drums. And of course, all of the compositions are co-composed by Clive Nolan and Mick Pointer. But some incredible music. So there are the lyrics, and we've got more lyrics here as well. A different change of colour there with more lyrics and some cool artwork there. And more lyrics. And more lyrics there as well. And we've got all the production notes and credits. But once again, just like the first album, excellent from start to finish. So we've got the first track, which is the opener, Welcome to the Cage, which is excellent. Crying for Help, Part 5, which is brilliant. Empire of a Thousand Days is great. Crying for Help 6 is brilliant. Medusa is brilliant. Crying for Help 7, which is great. Fool's Gold is great. Crying for Help 8 is brilliant. And then we got the 13-minute epic Sirens. But holy cow, start to finish, remarkably strong, equally as good as the first album, and just a great follow up because some bands, on occasions, they would release a very strong debut album, and then the second album would be okay, but maybe not as strong. Not the case here, Arena. They put out a great follow up, which is just as good as the first album. So the standouts for me are Welcome to the Cage, Empire of a Thousand Days, Medusa, Crying for Help 8, and Sirens. But the whole album, I love it, start to finish, remarkably strong, very enjoyable. Clive Nolan's keyboards is massive. Mick Pointer's drumming is all over the music. Keith Moore's crunchy guitar playing is great. And Paul's vocals is just absolutely outstanding. Very enjoyable, in my opinion. So there you have it. Pride, an excellent follow up to the songs from The Lion's Cage, and very enjoyable in my opinion. Absolutely love this one. So we move on to the next album, and this one came out in 1987, and it's an EP, and this one is called The Cry. So, original guitarist Keith Moore is gone, and his replacement is, of course, guitarist John Mitchell, who would go on to become one of the cornerstones for Arena. And he's been playing in the band now for the last 28 plus years now. And this would pretty much lead to the birth of the core of the band, comprised of Clive Nolan, Mick Pointer, and John Mitchell. And pretty much from this album, these three gentlemen would remain in the band throughout all of the different incarnations and various lineups. And as I said, this is pretty much the core of Arena, so to speak. So, as I mentioned, The Cry is an EP featuring various different songs and new versions of material from the first two albums, but it's still very much an album of new material. And John Mitchell pretty much would set the tone for what Arena would go on to become, and he's got a massive presence on this album, and he would go on to play an even more larger role in later albums. But wow, what a first impression for John Mitchell. Don't get me wrong, Keith Moore did an outstanding job on the first two albums, but I'm a John Mitchell guy. He is just a very tasty guitar player, great composer, not a bad singer too. You know, he is the whole package. He can do it all, and he fits in very well in Arena and just plays like he's been in the band for 10 years. You know, that just shows you how strong of a musician John Mitchell really is. So let's have a quick look, shall we? So we've got, we got the covers here. So there's a little introduction about, this EP. So we've got the lyrics, and we've got more lyrics here as well. And of course, we've got the credits as well. So we've got Paul Wrightson on vocals, John Mitchell on guitars, Clive Nolan on keyboards, John Jarrett on bass, and Mick Pointer on drums. And all compositions are written and composed by Clive Nolan and Mick Pointer, with the exception of one co-composition with Clive Nolan, Mick Pointer, and John Jarrett, and one John Mitchell contribution as well. And we've also got a guest contribution from Steve Rothery from Marillion. So some excellent lineup here and great collection of songs here. So a lot of these songs are quite short. So altogether it's like 35 minutes of music, but there's some really good stuff here. So we got the theme, which is like 55 seconds, and then we've got the title track, The Cry. which is a theme based around various versions, new and old, of Crying for Help from the first two albums, Songs from the Lion's Cage and Pride. So this is pretty much like a concept album of the first two albums just combined, but with all different ideas and material going on here. So we got The Offering, which is great. Problem Line is another great track. Isolation, which is quite short but still very enjoyable. Fallen Idols is great. Guidance is excellent. Only Child is great. Stolen Promise is great. And The Healer is great as well. But, this is not to be sniffed at. EPs can still be enjoyable as well. And I love the instrumentals. The instrumentals were very haunting and very brooding, but very enjoyable. It's quite cool to see how this concept from the first two albums of Crying for Help really come together with this one. But there's some really good stuff here. So the standouts for me are The Cry, The Offering, Problem Line, Fallen Idols, Guidance, Only Child, and Stolen Promise and The Healer. But the whole album slash EP is very enjoyable and some really good playing from all of the band members. And Mitchell plays an important role here, but he'll go on to play an even bigger role in later Arena albums. So there you have it, The Cry, a very enjoyable EP and a great first appearance from the one and only John Mitchell. Absolutely love this one and very enjoyable. So we move on to the next album, and this one came out in 1988, and this one is called The Visitor. Now, The Visitor is considered by all fans to be the best arena album of all time. A lot of the band's classic tracks come from this album, and a lot of these songs would go on to become mainstays in the band's set list. And this is a special double edition of The Visitor. So we've got the first disc of the album, which is remastered, and the second disc would feature live tracks and acoustic versions. And it's not hard to see why The Visitor is held in such high regard by all arena fans. It's hard hitting, it's epic, it's dark, it's brooding, it's very soothing as well. You name it, it's all here. And wow, this album really delivered a hell of a punch. Now, the EP and the first two albums are great, but I think with The Visitor, for me, this was when Arena really became the band that we know now. And I've seen the band play this live in its entirety, and it was an amazing experience. And John Mitchell really comes out of his box and just dominates the music with his ear splitting guitar playing, and he just really goes for it. And at times, some of his guitar playing reminds me of Pink Floyd's David Gilmour. But, all due respect to David Gilmour, a great guitar player in his own right. But John Mitchell, he's just an absolute badass. He really is. And absolutely love this album. And some of my favourite songs of Arena are from The Visitor. So let's have a quick look. Look at John Mitchell with his long hair. You can see it's him, but it's just funny to see him with really long hair. So let's have a quick look, shall we? So there is all the tracks. There's all the lyrics. And there's more lyrics here as well. There's more lyrics here as well. And some amazing artwork here. They got some creepy vicar there as well. Brilliant. Yeah. It's quite a quirky album. And a very scaredy album too. So there's more lyrics there as well. And there's more lyrics here. and more lyrics. And we got some cliff notes from Clive Nolan. But outstanding album, absolutely enjoyable. So we got the opener, A Crack in the Ice, which, let's be real here, one of the greatest arena songs of all time. And it's the ultimate arena opener. And I've seen Arena open their gigs with this song quite a few times. And John Mitchell, he just owns it. And I've always looked at this song as John Mitchell's song. He just absolutely dominates it. Do, 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 do. I defy you to stand in the crack of the ice. Oh, brilliant song. Absolutely brilliant. Then we got Pins and Needles is great. Double Vision is excellent. Aaliyah, which is great. The Hanging Tree is brilliant. A State of Grass is great. Blood Red Room is great. In the Blink of an Eye is excellent. Don't Forget to Breathe is great. Serenity is great. Tears in the Rain. Enemy Without. Running from Damascus is great. And the title track, The Visitor. Excellent stuff. Absolutely tremendous stuff. And then we got on the second disc, we got State of Grace Acoustic, Tears in the Rain Acoustic, Double Vision Live, Aaliyah Live, The Hanging Tree Live, and a demo version of Enemy Without. But holy cow, this album is an arena classic, in my opinion. So the standout tracks for me on disc one are A Crack in the Ice, Pins and Needles, Double Vision, The Hanging Tree, A State of Grace, Blood Red Room, In the Blink of an Eye, Tears in the Rain, Enemy Without, Running from Damascus, and the title track, The Visitor. And the standout tracks for me on disc two are Double Vision Live, Aaliyah, and The Hanging Tree. But holy cow, this whole album, start to finish, is quite possibly Arena's best album, in my opinion. So many memorable songs, unbelievable guitar playing from John Mitchell, great keyboard playing from Clive Nolan. Mick Pointer just absolutely a powerhouse on the drums. Just wow, just a dynamite album. And as I said, a lot of these songs Arena still play to this day. A tremendous album and an all-time Arena classic. So there you have it. The Visitor, quite possibly the best Arena album ever. Absolutely love this one so much, and some of my favourite songs are from this album. So there you have it, The Visitor. Tremendous stuff. So we move on to the next album, and this one came out in 2000, and this one is called Immortal. Holy cow, this album, equally as good as The Visitor, absolutely fantastic. Although there are only 7 tracks on this album, every song on this album is just pure dynamite, and I really like this one a lot. I thought this one was tremendous from start to finish. So many great songs. The playing was memorable. It was dark. It was epic. It was brooding and really powerful. A very powerful album, in my opinion, and really had a lot of energy. And The Visitor had a lot of energy as well. And that kind of carried on over into Immortal, just an absolute powerhouse of an album. And you can really hear these guys just absolutely giving it their all and just really going for the jugular. So let's have a quick look, shall we? So for this album, you can see a shift here. All of the compositions are co-composed by Clive Nolan, Mick Pointer, and John Mitchell. So you can see already John Mitchell has already become a writer for the band as well, and he really plays a big part on this album, as he does on all of the later albums. And all of the lyrics are written by Clive Nolan. But yeah, that would pretty much, as I said earlier, that is pretty much like the core of Arena. Clive Nolan, Mick Pointer, and John Mitchell. So there is the lyrics. And there's more lyrics here as well. And there's the guys. So we've got a different lineup here. So of course we've got Clive Nolan on keyboards, Mick Pointer on drums, and John Mitchell on guitars. So now we've got Rob Soden on vocals and Ian Salmon on bass. And this would pretty much lead to the birth of the classic arena lineup. And this one would remain together for 11 years, as I said at the beginning, from 1988 to 2010. And this lineup in particular made a lot of great music together. And this is the one that really sustained the most longevity out of all of the different lineups up until the more later years. But wow, what an amazing group of musicians. So, got more lyrics here as well. And more lyrics here. And more lyrics here as well. So, as always, start to finish, this was an excellent album. So we got the opener, Chosen, which is excellent. Waiting for the Flood is great. The Butterfly Man is great. Ghost in the Firewall is great. Climbing the Net was great. Movie Drome is excellent, which is like the longest track of the entire album, which is like 19 minutes. And then we got Friday's Dream. But damn, this album was so good. Really enjoyed this one a lot. And the standout tracks for me are Chosen, The Butterfly Man, Ghost in the Firewall, Movie, Drome, and Friday's Dream. But start to finish, an excellent album, equally as good as The Visitor, and just an epic, just an absolute prog epic, in my opinion. So there you have it, Immortal. Tremendous album, and one of my favorites, actually. This really quickly became one of my favorites from Arena. Absolutely enjoyed this one a lot. So there you have it, Immortal. Great stuff. So we move on to the next album, and this one came out in 2003, and this one is called Contagion. So Contagion, another great album from Arena. A little bit different to some of the other Arena albums, whereas the earlier albums had much longer tracks. The tracks on this one, while still very good, are a little bit more shorter, so they're clocking in at around 4 to 5 minutes. So there's a lot more songs, but probably more on the shorter side, but still some great music. And a lot of the compositions are co composed by Clive Nolan, Mick Pointer, and John Mitchell. But it's a very good album. It's very brooding and quite menacing and very hard hitting in certain areas, but very enjoyable. I really like this one a lot. The cover's quite demonic as well, and just a very good, strong album, in my opinion. So let's have a quick look. So there's the guys. Awesome album cover. So, as I said, most of the compositions are co-composed by Mick Pointer, Clive Nolan, and John Mitchell, and there's a few compositions, that are written by John Mitchell as well. But yeah, as I said, the songs, while they're great, they're a little bit more shorter compared to some of the earlier albums. So there it is, good stuff there. There's the lyrics as well. There's a couple of instrumentals as well, which absolutely kick ass, I think. Absolutely brilliant. We've got more lyrics here. And more lyrics here as well. And we've got more lyrics here too. And more lyrics here as well. So we've got the first track, which is Witch Hunt, which is a great opener. An Angel Falls is great. Painted Man is great. This Way, Madness Lies, one of my favourite instrumentals from Arena. Do-do-do-do. Do-do-do-do. Absolutely brilliant. Spectre at the Feast is great. Never Ending Night is great. Skin Game is great. Salamander is great. On the Box, which is another instrumental, absolutely fantastic. Tsunami is great. Bitter Harvest, excellent. The City of Lanterns is great. Riding the Tide, another great instrumental, absolutely brilliant. Mirkuli is great. Cutting the Cards is great. And Ascension is an excellent closer. But the whole album, top to bottom, is just remarkable. Absolutely enjoyed this one a lot. As I said, it's quite a dark album, but a lot of the songs are quite short, but still a very enjoyable album. So the standout tracks for me are Witch Hunt and Angel Falls, This Way, Madness Lies, Spectre at the Feast, Salamander, On the Box, Tsunami, Follow Ground, The City of Lanterns, Cutting the Cards, and Ascension. But top to bottom, another remarkably strong album from Arena. A very dark album from Arena. Do kind of miss the longer songs just a bit, but still some great music here. And as I said, there are no bad albums from Arena whatsoever, but really enjoyed this one a lot. So there you have it. Contagion, excellent album, and one of the darkest albums in Arena's catalogue, in my opinion, but still really good stuff. So there you have it. Contagion, tremendous album from Arena. Love it. So we move on to the next album, and this one also came out in 2003, and it's an EP, and this one is called Contagious. So Contagious is the sequel to Contagion, and it's got some tracks, that weren't on that album. So it's an EP, and we've got one remix from another track from Contagion, but really enjoyable. As I said, it's an EP, so there's only about 5 tracks on this album, but still very enjoyable. So we've got Vanishing Act, I Spy, the title track, Contagious, The Hourglass, and a remix of Witch Hunt. But some really good, memorable songs on here. So, this acts as a sequel to Contagion, but still really good. So, standout tracks for me are I Spy, Contagious, The Hourglass, and I actually quite enjoyed the remix of Witch Hunt. Maybe not as much as I prefer the original, just a bit more, but the remix is still fun, I would say. So, there you have it. Contagious, nice little EP, and a great sequel to Contagion, in my opinion. Tremendous stuff. Love it. So we move on to the next album, and this one also came out in 2003, and it's an EP as well. And this one is called Contagion. So Contagion is a continuation of Contagious and Contagion, but really good stuff here. And as I said, Contagion, Contagious, and Contagion kind of act like their own little concept in a way. So you've got to have all 3 of these to get the full experience, listening wise, of what the whole thing is all about. But really good stuff here. So for this EP, we've got 4 tracks, including one remix of another track from Contagion, but very enjoyable. So it got On the Edge of Despair, which is excellent. The March of Time is great. Confrontation is great. And a remix of Salamander. But very enjoyable. As I said, it's an EP. Maybe they could have done with putting maybe all of these together as one. I believe you can buy, I think you can buy the whole set with all of this together, but maybe they could have just slung it in as bonus discs or something, but who knows what was going on at the time. But there's still some really good music here. So the standouts for me are The March of Time and Confrontation and On the Edge of Despair. But the whole EP, very enjoyable, and as I said, a sequel to Contagious and Contagion, but very enjoyable. So there you have it. Contagion, nice little sequel to the previous two of that series. So there you have it. Contagion, very enjoyable little EP in my opinion. Great stuff. So we move on to the next album, and this one came out in 2005, and this one is called Pepper's Ghost. So Pepper's Ghost is a concept album which tells the story about five heroes in the 19th century in London who join forces to fight crime and battle a demon. And the team is comprised of an exorcist, a ninja, a scientist who travels through time, a count, and a cowboy. And throughout the booklet, you see the story is told as a mini comic book. And it's a really good album. It's a very enjoyable album. And, you know, concept albums can be quite cool when they're executed really well. And Arena do exactly that. And it's a very well put together album. And it's really good. So let's have a little quick look here. So there is the credits. Now, as you go along here, you can see not just the lyrics, but you can also see how the story is unfolding as you turn each page. So it just gives you like a little run through of what's going on as you move along here. So, as I said, each track more or less just conveys what's going on in the panels. And me being the comic book geek that I am, I eat this sort of stuff for breakfast. So this is quite a cool thing to listen to the music while you're going through the panels and pages of this. So it's quite cool. I like it. So as you can see here, as you go along, the story just unfolds more and more. As you can see there. And there's more there as well, as they all band together to defeat the demon. And there you see the demon there, who they're battling. So that's what it's mainly all about. So all five members of Arena are more or less like playing the characters in the book. And there you see the guys at the end. Great stuff here. So we've got Bedlam Friar, which is a great opener. Smoke and Mirrors is excellent. The Shattered Room is brilliant. The Eyes of Lara Moon, which is excellent. Tantalus is great. Purgatory Road is great. And then we got the epic opera Fanatica. Excellent stuff. A really fun album. Very enjoyable and absolutely loved it. So the standout tracks for me are Purgatory Road, Opera Fanatica, Bedlam Friar, Smoke and Mirrors, and The Shattered Room. But overall, top to bottom, is an excellent album, in my opinion. And this album would mark the final appearance of singer Rob Soden as he would leave the band in 2010. But what a way for him to go out. He is on top vocal form, as are the entire band. But this album would mark the end of the classic Arena lineup. But as I said, you know, this band lasted 11 years, which is not to be sniffed at. So when I think of Arena, all due respect to all of the great lineups before and after, but this was for me the one that really made Arena so special. Lots of great albums, lots of memorable stuff, you name it. These guys did it together. And as I said, they lasted a really long time, 11 years, which is quite an amazing accomplishment in the prog rock world. But they did it, and they did it as good as anybody I've ever seen. So there you have it. Pepper's Ghost, an excellent album and a great concept album, and highly recommended for comic book fans if you like this sort of thing. I think you would really eat this one up very well. So there you have it. Pepper's Ghost. Excellent album, in my opinion. One of Arena's best ones. So we move on to the next album, and this one came out in 2011, and this one is called The Seventh Degree of Separation. So the seventh degree of separation marks the first appearance of Paul Manzi, who replaced the band's longtime singer Rob Soden. And Paul Manzi is quite possibly, for my money, one of the best singers Arena ever had. He is a fantastic singer. He brings a lot of theatricality in his vocals, and he really knows how to convey a lot of emotions through his singing voice. And he's a tremendous singer. You know, he's got a lot of power. He brings a lot of energy to the music, and he's just an all-round great talent. And you know, he would go on to become one of Arena's second longest singers in the band. And he's just an all-round fun guy, and he brings a lot of fun to the music, in my opinion. Just an all-round great singer. So let's have a quick look, shall we? A bit of scary stuff there. Love the artwork here, absolutely gorgeous. It's got the lyrics here as well, and more lyrics here, and more awesome artwork. That's quite spooky there. Very ominous picture there. Very horror-esque. Brilliant stuff. There's my solicitor. He's a scary dude. Yay, that looks quite painful there. Yeah, this is definitely a horror type of album for Arena. It's lots of scary imagery. And there's the hand. Spooky. I have no idea what's going on there. I won't even ask. Oh, that is awesome. I actually like that one. That's a really cool picture there. This picture reminds me a little bit of Dead End Kings by Catatonia. Quite similar. Great artwork here. Gotta say here, this album's got some tremendous artwork. So we've got The Great Escape, which is the opener. Excellent stuff. Rapture is a great track. One Last Revoir is great. The Ghost Walks is great. FIFA Souls is brilliant. Close Your Eyes is great. Echoes of the Fall is great. Bed of Nails is great. What If is great. Trebuchet is great. Burning Down is great. Catching the Bullet is great. And The Tinderbox is great. So, you know, once again, I can't help but notice another shift in Arena's music. Still great. No bad album here, but again, more shorter songs. Because, as I said earlier, when you look at the Rob Soden period of the band, there were a lot of long songs. There really was. But now we get to the Paul Manzi period of the band, and I noticed, especially with this album, great material, of course, but the songs are a little bit shorter. Not as long as some of the other albums, but still really good. But I kind of like the longer tracks more because I feel that's where Arena really get to strut their stuff and really stretch it out, you know, as humanly possible. But maybe they just wanted to go in a different direction. But I'm not going to lie. I do like the longer songs just a little bit more. So the standout tracks for me are The Great Escape, One Last Au Revoir, The Ghost Walks, Close Your Eyes, Echoes of the Fall, What If, Burning Down, Cashing the Bullets, and The Tinderbox. But very strong album, as are all of the Arena albums. There are no weak ones whatsoever. But obviously there are some I like a bit more than others, but there's still some really good stuff. You know, Arena sound amazing as always. Mick Pointer is great on the drums. Clive Nolan brings lots of big keyboard soundscapes. And John Mitchell, he's just tearing it up on the guitar as always. And Paul Manzi, he really commands great presence with his vocal range, and he's just a fantastic singer. So there you have it, guys. The Seventh Degree of Separation, another excellent album from Arena, and the first appearance of Paul Manzi, who delivers an amazing vocal performance on this album and just fits in really nicely with the guys, and he just sounds absolutely fantastic. So there you have it, The Seventh Degree of Separation. Excellent stuff. And as I said, another great album from Arena. Absolutely love this one. So we move on to the next album, and this one came out in 2015, and this one is called The Unquiet Sky. So this is the second album to feature Paul Manzi, and this album is absolutely fantastic. It's fast, dark, hard-hitting, atmospheric, haunting, and delivers a hell of a punch, and it's just fantastic. And I've got to see Arena play this album live, and it sounded even better. And as great as Arena sound in the studio, they really tear it up live. And this album, if you haven't seen them play it live, you know what I'm talking about. It was just an amazing experience. Just hearing these guys play this album was just a real treat for me. And Paul Manzi's vocals was just top notch, as were all of the bands playing. They were just on fire at that gig playing this album. Absolutely loved it. So let's have a quick look, shall we? So as you can see, there's the full picture. We don't actually have a title of the album, but if you look on the side, you can see it's Arena. So John Jarrett is gone, and in his place is Kylan Amos, who replaces John Jarrett on bass. So pretty much the same lineup here as the last album, but we just got a different change of bass player. So lots of great material here, and all of the music is written and composed by Clive Nolan and Mick Pointer, and also contributions from Paul Manzi, Kylan Amos, and John Mitchell as well. So there we are. Great artwork there. And more artwork there. So in a way, it's kind of like another concept album. Beautiful artwork here. More great artwork there. And more great artwork there as well. And great artwork here as well. But the whole album, as always, start to finish, is just tremendous. So we got The Demon Strikes, which is just a badass opener. Paul Manzi is just absolutely on fire. Can you hear the sound of darkness? Just chills. How Did It Come to This is excellent. The Bishop of Lufford is great. Oblivious to the Night is excellent. No Chance Encounter is great. Markings on a Parchment is great. The Unquiet Sky is great. What Happened Before is great. Time Runs Out is excellent. Returning the Curse is great. Unexpected Dawn is great. And Traveller Beware. Good stuff here. Excellent album. Start to finish. Everyone just rips it up. Mitchell is on fire on the guitar. Paul Manzi's vocals is all over the album. Clive Nolan's keyboards really give it that brooding sound. Kylan Amos is just a thunderous bass player, and Mick Pointer just bringing so much power like he always does with his thunderous drumming. But top to bottom, this is just an excellent album. And the standouts for me are The Demon Strikes, How Did It Come to This, Oblivious to the Night, No Chance Encounter, The Unquiet Sky, What Happened Before, Returning the Curse, Unexpected Dawn, and Traveller Beware. Great album, very enjoyable, and one of the best Arena albums from the recent side of the band's catalogue. Just absolutely loving it. Just a great album. So there you have it. It's The Unquiet Sky, another great album from Arena, and damn, one of my all-time favourites from the catalogue. Absolutely love it. So we move on to the next album, and this one came out in 2018, and this one is called Double Vision. So another great album from Arena, and this one would sadly mark the final appearance of Paul Manzi as he would leave the band just a few years after. But wow, he really goes out on a real high note. We didn't know at the time this was going to be his final album, but wow, he really went out with a bang and delivered quite possibly the best vocal performance of his tenure with Arena. Just an excellent album, great performance from the whole band, and just a really good, strong album. So let's have a quick look, shall we? So we've only got 7 tracks, but they're quite relatively long tracks. So we're kind of going back to the style of the earlier albums. So let's have a look. Quite a brooding artwork here of all the band members. There's the lyrics here. There's the whole band looking scary. Amos looks quite scary there, especially with a hat. Imagine seeing Clive Nolan down an alleyway. It looks quite frightening. And there's John Mitchell looking quite frightening here. So as I said, there's only about 7 tracks, but they're quite long. So we got the first track, which is Zivago Wolf, which is great. The Mirror Lies is excellent. Scars is another great track. Paradise of Thieves is great. Red Eyes is great. Poisoned is great. And we got the 22-minute epic, The Legend of Elijah Shade, which is, for my money, the best track of the entire album and a brilliant closer, in my opinion. And the standouts for me are Zivago Wolf, The Mirror Lies, Paradise of Thieves, Poisoned, and The Legend of Elijah Shade. But it's a really good album. And I'm not going to lie, I was quite bummed out that Paul Manzi left because I really liked him. He was probably my favourite singer of all of the Arena singers. He just brought so much fun and energy to the music, and I was a little bit bummed out he was gone. But wow, he really went out on a high note with these guys. But I wish he'd stayed. But you know, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. But wow, he really left his mark with these guys, and what a way to go out. So there you have it, Double Vision, excellent album from Arena, and the final appearance of Paul Manzi. But wow, what a way to go out. Absolutely love it. Great album. So we move on to the next album, and this one came out in 2022, and this one is called The Theory of Molecular Inheritance. So, The Theory of Molecular Inheritance marks the first appearance of Damien Wilson, formerly of Threshold, Headspace, and also the singer for Arian and Star One and many other great projects from Arjen Lucassen. Damien Wilson, an unbelievable frontman, a tremendous singer, very different to the previous 4 singers. He doesn't sound like any of the other guys because they all sounded very similar. Damien Wilson is very much his own man, and he delivers what I would probably say is one of the greatest vocal performances of his career. He just brings so much power and so much energy, and he's a prog metal guy through and through. Whereas a lot of the others, they were more like rock based singers. Damien Wilson, he's a metal man through and through, and it really shows. And he really injects new life into the band, and he's just got such a huge presence on this album, and he leaves his mark all over the music and in the band as well. And he just really helped elevate these guys to a whole new level. Not saying Paul Manzi or the other singers didn't, because they did, but Damien Wilson, he's the man. He is the whole package. He can do it all. He's just an amazing singer. So we're just going to have a quick look. I actually got to see Arena with Damien Wilson. This was like his first gig. A cool picture there. So all of the compositions are co-composed by John Mitchell, Mick Pointer, and Clive Nolan, with a couple of contributions from Damien Wilson as well. But yeah, it's good. It's really good. So we got the lyrics here. We've got more lyrics here as well. And more lyrics there as well. We've got more lyrics here. So this is all about the equation and theory of time. And we got more lyrics as well. And we also got some notes from Louis Nasser as he gives his thoughts on the molecules of the universe and how the atoms are made up. So we've got the first track, Time Capsule, which is excellent and really helps set the tone for what this whole album is going to be about. And it also marks the arrival of Damien Wilson. Then we got The Equation, The Science of Magic is excellent. 21 Grams is great. Confession is great. The Heiligenstadt Legacy, which is great. Field of Sinners is great. Pure of Heart is excellent. Under the Microscope is brilliant. Integration is great. Part of You and Life Goes On. Great collection of songs. Everybody is on fire. Damien Wilson is on top form. John Mitchell always on top form. Kylan Amos is great. Clive Nolan and Mick Pointer, they just sound fantastic as always. So the standout tracks for me are Time Capsule, The Equation, The Science of Magic, Confession, Field of Sinners, Pure of Heart, Under the Microscope, Integration, and Life Goes On. Just a really strong album from Arena and the first epic appearance of Damien Wilson. Just a fantastic, strong first album with their new singer. And a lot of fans have been wondering whether or not Damien Wilson is going to remain with Arena because he's a very in demand man. So time will tell whether he stays or not. But I like to think that he's going to stick around at least for a couple more albums. But we'll see. But he's a very busy boy. So we'll just have to see what happens, really. But as it stands right now, Damien Wilson is still the current singer for Arena as we are speaking. But that could change. You just never know. So there you have it, guys. The Theory of Molecular Inheritance, an excellent album from Arena and a great first appearance for Damien Wilson, who is just on top vocal form. So there you have it. The Theory of Molecular Inheritance, an excellent album and one of Arena's most strongest albums in their catalogue, in my opinion. Love it. So, which Arena album do I think is the best one? Well, it's tough because they're all excellent, and after listening to their entire catalogue, there's no bad album here. They're all good. You can't go wrong with any of them. And if someone were to ask me which Arena album would I recommend, just the whole catalogue. There's so many good ones to choose from, and any of these albums could be a number one or an all-time favorite because there are no bad albums whatsoever. But if I had to choose which Arena album do I think is the best one, we are definitely going with The Visitor because this was the album where Arena really became the band that we know. Lots of great tracks, so many memorable songs, just an all-time Arena classic. And for me, this is when Arena were officially born, and John Mitchell just dominates the album. Everybody is on top form. So many great tracks. Easily, The Visitor is the best Arena album ever. As I said, any of these albums could be a number one or all-time favorite, but I'm going with The Visitor because it's so damn good, and they still play a lot of these songs to this day. So obviously they like it just as much as we the fans do. So there's something to it, in my opinion. So there you have it. The Visitor, the one that I consider to be the best arena album ever. Absolutely love this one so much. So that's going to be it from me. I am going to wrap this up now. What's your favourite arena album? Is it Songs from the Lion's Cage, Pride, The Cry, The Visitor, Immortal, Contagion, Contagion, Contagious, Pepper's Ghost, The Seventh Degree of Separation, The Unquiet Sky, Double Vision, or The Theory of Molecular Inheritance? There's no right or wrong answer. We all have our favourite albums. You know what to do, guys. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave your thoughts and comments down below, and I will see all of you next time for another edition of the Progressive Rock and Metal album review series. So until next time, take care, everybody, and stay safe. And once again, as always, much appreciated. Thanks for listening.